Possible Worlds 2000, a Canadian movie. Basically, it's a bunch of random scenes, one after the other. I don't get the sense there's an actual proper full on story. It's a bunch of random scenes. Every scene is just a random bunch of weird, oddball dialogue, and it just doesn't really add up to an awful lot. It's interesting, certainly. I actually quite enjoy it. I like oddball, bizarre, eccentric movies, and this is definitely an oddball, eccentric movie. I think just because it's the same characters reoccurring from scene to scene, it gives the impression of a traditional narrative, that there is an actual story you can follow and understand. That if you could just work out the connection between scene 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, that you can work out what it all means, what the overall story actually is. But I don't think there really is, overall, at the end, much of an actual proper story. And as for the actual climax, when there is some sort of a revelation explaining what's going on, it is both very banal, abrupt, and basically unsatisfying. It's about as unsatisfying an answer as you can expect. On an individual scene by scene basis, it's mostly quite intriguing. Certainly, it's a very peculiar movie that has unusual artistic ambitions. I believe it's actually a stage play that they filmed. It's a very intriguing, peculiar, oddball story. You can attempt to join the dots and work out the connection between the various scenes, but I think for the most part you're wasting your time trying to find the narrative link between the different scenes, and connections to the different bits and pieces is a waste of time. A good example of this would be the caretaker who discovers the dead body at the start of the movie, turns up later on about halfway in at the police station to say that he saw a flying saucer, and then a few scenes later turns up dead, and his death is very peculiar because he froze to death at room temperature. And on previous viewings, I have always been a bit puzzled by what this actually contributes to the plot, what it has to do with anything else. And I've always come to the conclusion it is a random bunch of nonsense. Watching the movie this time, I am very aware that it really is just a bunch of random scenes, and I feel very confident in saying that the caretaker storyline section, which takes up mere minutes of story time at most, is truly just random content that contributes nothing of note. I got it, I understood what it was trying to do, which is just basically be a bunch of random weird stuff. Canadian movies have a very peculiar style, very austere. David Cronenberg kind of really does dominate in his style in Canadian cinema, and a lot of movies made in Canada just have a very David Cronenberg vibe, and this movie has a David Cronenberg vibe. Very unusual. I liked it, but On this viewing, I have to say that the sheer randomness of it was hard to overlook. There is no two ways about it. It is pretty random. It does not add up to a proper, convincing, joined up story. I would give it 6 out of 10. Above average, but I wouldn't call it good. Certainly worth watching if you're into peculiar, oddball movies. I would strongly recommend it. It is, despite its many deficiencies, very worth watching. I would recommend it on the understanding that I'm not saying it's a particularly good movie, but it is a very interesting movie. It's worth a watch.